A lot of Elder Scrolls is fighting and seriousness and war and destruction and mayhem and magic and all these classic swords and sorcery type things. But there's also some fun, some partying that happens in the Elder Scrolls universe. And that falls under the realm of Sanguine, the Daedra, known as the Lord of Revelry, Blood Made Pleasure, and he who tastes the shaven fruit. He is the Daedric god of hedonistic pleasure, debauchery, wild orgies, passionate indulgences, and darker natures. He is also the prince of lust, perversity, and unnatural sexual relations. So definitely the far out there things of sexual activity in the Elder Scrolls universe. The really interesting thing about Sanguine is his evolution through the history of Tamriel. From his worship by the aliens and the elves, all the way up to how his worship has changed for primarily the human-based empire and what you experience in the modern Elder Scrolls games. So in this video, I thought it would be an interesting deep dive into the lore of Sanguine, seeing his beginnings, what he is up to, and sort of what he's all about. And before jumping into this lore deep dive, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me make more of this content. Thank you. And historically, going in Tamrielic chronological order, Sanguine is first mentioned by King Hael the Pious, 1,000 years after the Elysian Doctrines. It is improper, however, customary to refer to the denizens of the dimensions of oblivion as demons. This practice probably dates to the Elysian Doctrines of the First Era prophet Marhuk, which rather amusingly forbade traffic with daemons, and then neglected to explain what daemons were. It is most probable that daemon is a misspelling of the etymological rendition of Daedra, the old elven word for those strange, powerful creatures of uncertain motivation who hail from the dimensions of oblivion. Daedra is actually the plural form, the singular is Daedroth. In a later tract by King Hael the Pious of Skyrim, almost 1,000 years after the publication of the original doctrines, the evil machinations of his political enemies are compared to the wickedness of the demons of oblivion. Their depravity equals that of Sanguine itself. They are as cruel as Boethia, calculating as Molag Bal, and as mad as Sheogorath. Hael the Pious, thus long-winded introduction 4 of the Daedra Lords into written record. And that seems to be the first written evidence of Sanguine. But if we go to the second era, or just before the second era of the Empires of Man, Sanguine is involved with Remen Cyrodiil and helped him throw a bunch of parties, apparently. And a caveat, this is the Imperial Census of Daedra Lords, which is technically unofficial lore, but it was written by Michael Kirkbride, so a little bit of yes and no to as far as actually being legitimate lore here. And I'll spare reading the whole thing, but it's basically a description of each of the individual Daedric lords, and this is just specifically of Sanguine. Sanguine, prince of hedonism, lords over no less than 10 times 10,000 pleasure pockets of the void. As revelry and drunken stupor fall under this prince's influence. He has been a favorite of many emperors since the first foundation. Records even indicate that he resided in White Gold Tower during the reign of Remen Cyrodiil and helped him in the somewhat dubious draftsmanship of the Crendali festivals, whose vulgarities did little to help imperial expansion into Alinor and the other Somersets. So we also get some heads up that he was a huge partier and apparently was good buds with Remen, who apparently who would have known that the guy who reunited the Empire into the Second Era was a huge partier, but hey, do your thing. Another piece of Second Era Sanguine lore is that Sanguine's worshippers in Elsewhere apparently drank dragon's blood for him, and apparently blood drinking is sort of a huge part of Sanguine worship in Elsewhere. They, I believe, referenced him as the Blood Cat, and we get to read more about it in Nizada's journal from ESO. Our thanks, Sanguine, for this boon beyond our wildest dreams. This one will drink every drop of the dragon's blood in your name. None shall go to waste. She must cherish this prize, though, and use its bloody wisely, as she does not have much time. Grandwolf will not wait forever for his prize. Nizada knows her hopes are well founded, and her caution. The vial of dragon blood she drew is still hot to the touch. It is flush with magicka. So much so that her measures for the potency of essence are insufficient. If her mouth could water, the anticipation to taste this beast's blood would flow down her chin. But like the fiery desert peppers of Anaquana, its intensity gives her pause. She must be patient. Curse that slinking rat Renald. She does not know how his letter reached Grandwolf, but his words strike too close to the truth for this one's liking. Nizada has assured the devourer that the old bat is blind to the potential of their plans. She doubts this will be the last we hear of him. Nizada must act soon. Nizada's mixture is as close to perfect as she can make it. With what she has been given, she has used every vial of her rarest blood. She has performed every ritual, made every offering she knows for the blood cat's favor. She can be no more prepared for the time she tastes the dragon's blood. Nizada hopes she is being overcautious, but if the devourer becomes the devoured, her efforts will not have been wasted. So from here we get another sort of little introduction into sort of the worship and lore around Sanguine. He is not just purely the party Daedra. He also seems to have a weird fascination with sort of blood and gore and sort of the drinking of blood and sort of the disgusting nature around that, basically. The sort of hedonistic revelry of consuming things that probably aren't supposed to be consumed. And we're given another reference to the fact that Sanguine is about, however you want to say it, sort of the gross and disgusting sides of things in how he is worshipped in alien culture. In alien culture, he is known as Blood Made Pleasure, and they had a very different idea of partying in alien culture, which we learn about in Daedra Worship the Aliens. The reasons why the Daedra are reviled and their worship forbidden among all the civilized races of Tamriel are well understood, and as this series of papers will show, are grounded in historical events, the opinions of the so-called academic who styles herself Lady Cinnabar. Notwithstanding, the evidence supporting my assertions is incontrovertible and generally accepted by all accredited scholars of antiquity. The Aldmeri, who'd been first to begin organized worship of the Daedra, were also the first to venerate the Daedric lords. This probably began on a small scale among the aliens, those elves who left Somerset Isle to create splinter cultures in central and southwest Tamriel. In some cases, specifically to evade the strictures of Aldmeri regulation, which forbade, among many other things, the worship of Daedra. As alien culture flourished, drawing ever further from Alinor in the last millennium of the Merithic era, Daedric worship took hold and spread among the Heartland High Elves. The Daedra were still widely revered, with probably a majority of the aliens continuing to pay them homage, but cults devoted to the various Daedric princes sprang up across Cyrodiil, tolerated and then celebrated. Unlike the Chimer, the aliens made no distinction between good and bad Daedra. Indeed, even some of them, the more heinous princes, received mass veneration, especially when their worship was adopted and endorsed by the alien kings and aristocrats. Widespread Daedra worship among the Heartland High Elves was particularly ill news for the tribes of Nedic humans, who were among then arriving in Tamriel. The aliens enslaved the immigrant tribes of men and at first occasionally put them systematically, and the Nedic people found themselves subject to masters who in many cases worshipped the princes, including those who encouraged slavery, domination, and cruelty. Under the aliens, the human thralls found themselves the subject of such Daedric-inspired arts as flesh sculpture and gut gardening. In fact, the revulsion for Daedric worship that pervades most human cultures in Tamriel probably originated in this period. The Elysian slave revolt of the early First Era was largely fueled by the desperate rage against the alien Daedric-inspired cruelty. The alien kings who aligned themselves with the rebellion were largely Daedra worshippers, which in part explains why once the aliens were overthrown, Queen Alicia incorporated the leading elven Daedra into the First Empire's worship of the Eight Divines. Her new empire of Cyrodiil outlawed the worship of Daedric princes, and Daedric-worshipping aliens were exterminated whenever they were found. Thus, by the middle of the First Era, large-scale Daedric worship was extinct in central Tamriel, surviving only among the Chimer in the northeastern of the continent, and among the Orcs, ever a pariah people who worshipped Malakath as their god ancestor. Elsewhere, among men and beast peoples, Daedric worship survived only at the level of cults, which were more or less forbidden. Lady Cinnabar's assertions to the contrary are so much as hogwash. So we get an idea of gut gardening and flesh sculpting for blood made pleasure. And so it's interesting to see how Sanguine and his ways of receiving worship in the world has changed, and sort of a sign that also a human-run empire seems to be a lot more civilized than what came before it during the alien-run empire, and gives credence to why that sort of change and rebellion and extermination of the aliens happened. When you're acting that poorly, kind of makes sense why everyone's going to get pissed off at you and run you out of town or kill you all basically. And we learn more of it from the perspective of one of them, the masterwork of the Inducer. Much of the text from Edell's The Inducer's account is unreadable and cannot be salvaged. Like so many alien records, I have translated the intact excerpts to the best of my ability, but have to infer the meaning of some unclear terms. In truth, I am relieved that no more can be read. The original, with its grotesque and unnerving diagrams, will be sent back for preservation. I pray I will be permitted to leave this place soon. Pliability of its material, so vital and so obedient to my tools. It was a subject yearning for assent to the ultimate purpose of its form. A vision of the shape and the method took me immediately, and I stilled the form. I stopped its sight and speech, and it stood in the working space. I ordered the servants to stay and bear witness to a perfect example, and began the dedication rituals. And to it I sang and hummed and whispered. The cage of its heart gave assent and unfurled with no splintering, no cracking, the life's rhythm persisting. I ordered the fine silver change. Into each link I inscribed the 100 words for bliss, and I wrapped the cage and trunk all round to best display the organ at work. Such joy it must have been. Blood-made pleasure watched the work, guided my movement. A new inspiration came upon me, and fervently I grasped the sight oars between the implements. I blessed it with the wings of welkin, gently grafted and obtained at great expense. I extended its blood path, a delicate web within shining light. 8 stars for its crown, 8 rubies at its feet, splayed forearms reaching for Aetherius. It became real when I gave it the name Messenger Beast Redeemed. So this is definitely a very graphic, sort of grotesque thing that was supposedly a worship of Sanguine. And this is just sort of another... I made a whole video on why the aliens were not great people and why it's a good thing that they're gone. So if you want to watch more of that and figure out more about alien culture, you can watch that video. But it seems that Sanguine had a very big part in why aliens were the way they were. And it'll be really interesting to see if ever in the history of Elder Scrolls we get an explanation for why Sanguine seems to have changed his tune as far as what he likes and what he wants his worshippers to do. Maybe it's just he's reflecting the darker pleasures of the people that are worshiping him, in which maybe the aliens were generally bloodthirsty people, and the human empire of the modern eras is much more just into partying and, wild sex and all that stuff, far more tame things, I guess. And in the order that the games come out, our first interaction with Sanguine is in Daggerfall, when he gives us a pretty simple quest. All the quests in Daggerfall are relatively simple and procedurally generated, so it's nothing super crazy. But he does have some interesting dialogue and sort of gives us some interesting backstory about what he's about. A few honeyed words. Sanguine speaks to you. Power is such a lovely word, isn't it? It drips from the tongue like honey. If power is your aphrodisiac, I would be ecstatic to present you with the Sanguine Rose. All you have to do for me in return is punish a perfectly awful priest who dared to challenge me. Sounds good to you? Sanguine goes on. You won't regret this, player's first name, provided you fulfill your end of the agreement. This sanctimonious monk is not harmless. Monk's name is his or her name, and she burn my lovely worshippers to crisps. Go to the abandoned temple where she lurks, in the dungeon, and rip his or her heart from her chest. My agent worshipper's name will await you in town. They do not like to wait, so accomplish the murder in the time limit, days or less. I have the delicious feeling we'll see each other again. So it seems like he's a Daedra who is into getting revenge, which it seems like all of the ones in Daggerfall. They all seem to kind of want you to get revenge for some weird reason or do something random like that. But it seems like this monk, a pious monk, was beating up or killing his hedonistic revelers, and he decided to take that out on them. Sanguine doesn't really make much of an appearance in Morrowind because he is not considered one of the good Daedra by the Dunmer, and he's also not considered one of the bad for Daedra by the Dunmer, so he seems to have such a little bit more of a smaller role. He apparently was involved with making the web spinner's armor from Morrowind, the threads of the web spinner, and there really isn't much to say about this other than it is a Morag Tong quest, but it also seems to be more involved with Mephala. We then get to see Sanguine again in Oblivion, where if you worship at his shrine and give him some Cyrillic brandy...
Another mortal, come to beg Sanguine to add a bit of spice to an otherwise drab existence. I would have you perform a service for me. The Castle Leowyn is a dull, dreary place. The mistress is an especially somber soul, and tomorrow she will hold another excruciating dinner party. I want you to liven it up. Use this spell on the Countess and her guests. I think it will make the party much more interesting. You should probably try to be inconspicuous, or they might kill you. Oh, and the party is by invitation only. You'll have to find a way in. Have fun.
He will have you go to the Countesses of Leowyn's dinner party and spice it up a little bit by casting a spell that removes everybody's clothes, including yours, and requires you to run out of Leowyn and run out of town naked to survive. Which, if you do, he gives you all your stuff back and then gives you Sanguine's rose.
A rousing success, mortal. And it appears you joined in the festivities as well. Good for you. You need to lighten up a bit. You'll find your equipment in that chest over there. And here's a little something for your efforts. Maybe we'll celebrate again sometime.
And also our boy Martin, our perfect little good boy from the main quest. Apparently he had a run-in with Sanguine and also had Sanguine's rose. Apparently, though, this led to the death of one of his friends, which is sort of the reason why he turned his back on Daedra worship and became a man of the cloth.
I never thought to see this again. I once possessed it, briefly. A lifetime ago, it seems now. To obtain it and then give it up. I honor your dedication to our cause.
And then we run into Sanguine again in Skyrim, and I think this is, in my personal opinion, the best Sanguine quest by far.
You look like someone who can hold their liquor. How about a friendly contest to win a staff? If you're looking for a challenge, you've come to the right place. Ha! We'll see about that. This is a special brew. Very strong stuff. Let's get started. I'll start round one. Down the hatch.
You look like you could use a drink. What do you say?
Your
Take
turn.
a seat to me.
One down, my friend. One down. And another one for me.
They always try to take advantage of me. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile.
I'll tell you one thing.
And how about
If
you?
don't make peace with them soon, you may get a walk out on your head.
So says you. I think I've hit my limit on these things. Tell you what, one more and you win the contest. Wow, you've really done it. The staff is yours. You know, you're a fun person to drink with. I know this great little place where the wine flows like water. We should head there. Hey, you don't look so good.
And you wake up in Markarth and you have no idea what even happened, and you have to sort of do some detective work and make amends with the people that you sort of abused on your drunken bender. Once again, very, I would say, human-based drunken revelry and antics rather than the alien version, which is gut gardening and flesh sculpting. But once again, he gives you Sanguine's Rose, which will summon Daedra for you, which is always really nice. And that's the most that we know about Sanguine. Another reference to Sanguine is the fact that when you're trying to open the door for the very first time to the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary in Shadenhall, the password after you've been told, what is the color of night? The correct answer is Sanguine, my brother, which I think is somewhat of a reference to the darker side of Sanguine, the alien worship, but and the historical side of that, but also the fact that he is the Daedra, who is a descendant of Padme or Sithis, and Sithis is obviously a big fan of death and chaos and blood, so it kind of makes sense why there's a reference there. And I'm definitely looking forward to doing a Sanguine quest in Elder Scrolls 6. I'm really interested to see what it will be. I think that honestly they could definitely keep just going down the party theme and just make that as fun as humanly possible. Just make it funny, make it hilarious, silly. You know, I think that's definitely a great way of like breaking up the quests in Elder Scrolls, is having this sort of random Daedra quest that is just a fun party quest that you gotta do. Of course, it would be an interesting left field turn if they do bring back some of the alien worshipping style of Sanguine and there's some nasty blood guttiness of it all. That would also be really interesting. But I think no matter what happens, I'll probably be happy with it. So I'm looking forward to it, because it seems like as they've been sort of developing this character, they've only gotten better at it and fleshing him out, basically. And I think it's pretty obvious that the real-world analog of Sanguine is Dionysus, sort of the opposite of Apollo, sort of the classic type B personality of someone who is into the party scene, revelry, social, you know, the opposite of Apollo of you know, sort of light and justice and knowledge. This is sort of more of emotions, feeling, fun, and letting your hair down and just going wild. And it's a really interesting story to see how Sanguine has developed over the years in the Elder Scrolls games. Thanks for following me on this lore deep dive of Sanguine. It would mean a lot if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me make more of this content. Thank you.